strong beliefs loosely held. I think that kind of phrase has resonated throughout my career of having a direction, having a point of view, but then being amenable to new ideas to come in and changing course.
Welcome to That Pivotal Moment of Change, the podcast about the career stories that shape who we become. Wins, stumbles, tough calls. We get into all of it. If you're ready to grow, level up, or take a bold leap, you're in the right place. Quick ask, if you're getting value from the show, hit follow. It helps us grow and lets us know what's working. Today we're speaking with Emerson Taymor.
Hey, Emerson, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Ryan, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Excited that you're here, and I am looking forward to talking to you today. So let's start off with what you are up to at InfoBeans.
Yeah, so, I've been at InfoBeans for 5.5 years now, and I'm sure we'll get to that story. But these days, a lot of my focus has been on kind of this intersection of design, product, and AI. And how do we actually get AI projects to production? There's so much hype out there with AI, but a lot of teams are struggling to get ROI. So I've been kind of laser focused on figuring out how to do that and actually executing that.
Right on. And can you talk about how you got involved with product work?
It's a long road. So, I don't know how much we want to go into right off the bat, but I'll give you kind of the quick synopsis and then we can see where we want to drill into. I started my career, I was doing freelance work like when I was literally in middle school and high school growing up in San Francisco. And that led me into the advertising world and kind of web stuff in college. I thought I was going to move to New York after college, and which was at UCLA, and work in advertising. But while at UCLA, I met my co-founder of philosophy, and we started a design agency there. We really started as like, we'll do anything. Over the years, we just got more and more, and I can explain why, but we got more and more interested in UX and product work and more heavy, engineering type work. And so that was kind of, we ended up kind of going down that path randomly, I guess, to an extent.
So let's talk about philosophy. What was it that made you want to start your own company?
People always talk about these founders, these big kind of ideals, but the reality for that was both my co-founder, Scott Kruth, and I were both entrepreneurial. We were both freelancers. We met at UCLA. He was a few years older than me. We were both kind of just still friends after he graduated. He actually went into investment banking at Countrywide Financial. And this was, 2006, 2007, 2008. So we all know how that story played out for a young investment banker. And we both decided, hey, let's team up and see where this goes. So when we started, we were both moonlighting. And we didn't really know what to expect. We didn't have any grand vision. We were both entrepreneurial. I think we both had our own, dreams and hopes, but we didn't have the details of it all hashed out. And it turned into a beautiful thing. About 50 people at the end before we were acquired, split between Los Angeles and New York. And our team was a mix of product people, designers, and engineers, laser focused on helping teams, in the enterprise and startups go from 0 to 1 and just build software fast and really importantly, build the right software through rapid experimentation.
It's so cool, hearing that successfully starting your own company. Curious, what were some of the bigger challenges you faced getting your own business up and running?
There was endless. And I was just at lunch with a former colleague before this who's starting something. And I think the interesting thing with starting a business or doing a business, and anyone that's been in it, is you hear the grandiose tales on like Inc. magazine, you get excited about them, but in the weeds of building a business, it's really the grind. There's a lot of shit sandwiches you have to eat to make it over the finish line. So that's the hard part, but also the rewarding part about building a business. There's many moments within there that were challenges. I think when we started off, again, we were two young guys, both, doing freelance, but, this was 2008. So the global financial crisis was underway. And we were like, we'll do anything design, branding, advertising, web. We did some of that work, but really the focus ended up being web because of, being two young guys. But we didn't have much of a career. We didn't have much of a network. So, I think that was one of the hardest challenges getting off the ground, is that we were starting from, literally nothing, beyond a couple of small freelance clients and trying to get the next win to be able to have a home to live in, really.
Can you talk about how philosophy led to InfoBeans?
Yeah, so we ran philosophy from 2008. And then in 2019, we were doing pretty well. And we had some other partners that we had on the team, but we were kind of hitting a max. We were really struggling to get to the next level. And so like really break out above like $10 million in revenue and get to that next spot. And so we were looking at like, how can we get to the next level here? And we had a few options. We had like, we could, maybe do a roll up. We were either the main roll up or be part of a roll up of agencies. We could be acquired. We could look at bringing on more partners into the business. Scott and I had been doing this our whole professional lives. And so this was pretty much our whole net worth. And it was all being kind of pushed back in every year into the business, any profit we had. So there was a lot of grind. And I think it was a mix of like, we wanted to, especially if there was an upcoming, economic recession, which, there ended up being with the pandemic, we wanted to kind of take some chips off the table. And also just, I think get some new challenges and think about what were those new challenges. So we ran a mini process, to look at kind of feelers around acquisition and put some initial feelers out that got us some traction. And so then we ran still not like a super formal process for acquisition, but we had a few offers and we were debating whether we do it and we ended up going with it. And yeah, it was a great decision.
Moving forward here, a little bit of a pivot. And I know that you invest and advise in startups, and kind of curious how you got involved in that type of work. What are some lessons you've learned working with startups or, with businesses from an advisement perspective?
Yeah, so it really started with philosophy. Some of our clients and a lot of our success stories were early stage startups. And originally, some of them couldn't afford to pay our rates. And so we couldn't necessarily always do like a full equity deal to help the startups out. A couple friends we did, but some of them were cash equity splits where we would say, hey, this is how much it would cost to work with us. But a portion of this work, we're going to convert into equity or convertible debt or something. So that was my first taste. And even before that, even when I was doing freelance, I worked with a few startups and whatnot. And I mean, really just saw so many startups when working at philosophy. I mean, hundreds and probably thousands of startups came across our desk. We did office hours. So that was, I would think, the start of that process. Post acquisition, obviously had a little more cash to play around with, and also, more friends as they went along and looked at helping them with startups and building some businesses along the way with friends. So kind of hit a lot of different notes. But I think that the key aspect has always been trying to help unstick teams. I think especially a lot of early stage startups, they're so in the weeds, like especially a solo founder, even if he has a team, they often get very stuck. And sometimes it's just getting a fresh perspective and thinking about what can you do to move the puck forward to get to that next spot in your trajectory with as little effort as possible, with as little resources as possible. What are the small little experiments you might be able to run?
What are some of the key lessons you've learned throughout your career?
There's many of them, right? But I think a few that stick out, and I was, again, just at lunch and reflecting on a few of these. So one big one is just resilience and staying alive in whatever, whether it's your position or especially for startups, especially for small agencies, it's just around staying alive and being resilient. You never know when that next opportunity is going to come and what the path is. The next big one, which is a little bit tied to that, is strong beliefs loosely held. I think that kind of phrase has resonated throughout my career of having a direction, having a point of view, but then being amenable to new ideas to come in and changing course. And Scott and I, that was something that I think was very successful with our partnership, was that we would both be, we would both have ideas, but we would come to the table and we would try to, unlock each other or, get them over if we needed to. And we have some fun stories within that. And then another big one is, which is kind of tied to this, I would say, is just this idea of being open to change, like not being so level set and understanding, as opportunities are coming to your door, thinking about is this the right opportunity, but not always, being flexible, even if that's not the vision that you went down. We started as a design firm. We ended up being very much a digital product consultancy, everything, tech. So I think you never know which way these opportunities are going to lead itself. And those are really important. And then the last one I think is just ultimately do great work, be proud of the work that you're putting out there, and focus on making sure you're doing the best work at every stage of your career.
So there's two things that you just said that I want to drill in. And by the way, you said a lot of great things there. So thank you for that. The first is, talking about working with your partner and if there's consenting or conflicting ideas. How have you navigated those instances?
One was we literally foosball. So our first office when we first started was cafes, and kind of moonlighting. And then after we decided both full time we were going to go for it, we had a home office, and then our first real office was an early co-working space in LA, and that space had a foosball table in the kind of shared area, a common area. And so when there were intense moments and we couldn't break the deadlock, we would just say, okay, to the foosball table. And this would become kind of a common theme, throughout the years of, either going to a bar and playing a game of foosball if we didn't have one at the office. But doing something like that, it's silly, but it's kind of one of those things where one, you step out of it. The thing was always the winner of the one-on-one, their idea would go forward. But the other side of it was that, usually having that kind of moment to pull back and relax, one party or both sides might have kind of a epiphany, or it might kind of break the deadlock that way. And so that was the fun way. And I think that aspect always is like, can you take a step back? Can you get out of the thick of things? And then the other is just, you have to be, open to evidence and try, if you're not explaining yourself, understand that, it's not that it's a personal vendetta against someone. It's about how can I present the facts? How can we get to the root cause of things more effectively? And then I think with that too, I love what, Jeff Bezos has said about kind of the, one-way doors and two-way doors. And if you're not familiar with that, the concept is, many decisions are two-way doors. You can walk out and you can come right back. And then there's a few decisions that are one-way doors. If you open that door and go through, it's a big deal to walk back. But I think in many, many decisions, especially with smaller companies, almost every decision is a two-way door. And you have to be comfortable at saying, hey, let's try something out. Let's experiment, just like we would experiment in product work, right? It's like, oh, let's see if this works. If it doesn't work, we can go back. We have to be okay. We have to have a culture of going back and trying something new and admitting we were wrong. But as long as we're okay with trying something and reflecting, I think we're okay.
I love what you said about foosball. And it seems like just a simple thing, but stepping away from where there might be conflict and doing something that's fun and you're connecting on is just a really good way to, I think, just step back and say, okay, we're going to be able to solve this and work through it together. It's a great idea.
Yeah, 100%. And it works in everything, right? And I think in so many things, it's like you're in the heat of the argument, take a step back. Or if you're trying to solve a deep programming problem or a deep UX challenge and you can't really figure it out, take a step back, go for a walk, have a beer with a friend, and see what would happen.
Did you secretly practice foosball?
We didn't have time. I mean, I don't know. But we were both, we both, we were doing everything together. So there wasn't much, in the early days. So there wasn't much time to do, secret practice on each other.
The last thing that I wanted to ask you about, and you said something which I totally agree with, and I've had some interesting conversations on this one too. You mentioned do great work, or, sometimes people say, that make sure what you're doing is the right quality or something you're proud of. And it just becomes this very personal / subjective thing. How would you advise somebody to think about, okay, like now I know what I've done is actually great?
Yeah, that's a great question. And interesting story on that too, is that we are actually colophone, or our tagline of philosophy, and how we actually got the name philosophy was it came from all work is an act of philosophy, which is, I mean, I'm always hesitant because I'm not really an Atlas Shrugged fan and an Ayn Rand fan, but it comes from Atlas Shrugged. But the whole thesis was, everyone should, do all the work that they're most proud of and put that, it's on your shoulders, to put out the best work possible. So that was always kind of a theme of our business. All of our early websites, we said all work is an act of philosophy. I think, and how do you judge that? I mean, ultimately that's, up to the eye of the beholder. But part of it is also, I think, especially in a lot of the work that we do, it's recognizing what can you do, right? There's some things that are out of your hand. Like you can do the best that you can, but sometimes, we might design something that's amazing, but it gets handed off to an engineering team that like we're not doing, and it doesn't get launched. And that sucks. That is kind of a bummer of a feeling. But that is not always in our hands. And our job, is to do the best that we can with the kind of framework or the constraints that we're given, whether that's trying to set the engineering team up for success or setting our, experiment up with our, what success looks like for our hypothesis as best we can. I think a lot of it is just kind of a reflection of, did I do my best here? Did I give it my all to get it there? And at that point, hopefully it's good or it's great. And I think, where you take it past that, there's all sorts of different ways. But I think that's probably the easiest way to explain it.
What are some of the bigger challenges you faced in your career, and how did you overcome those challenges?
The big thing was always just like, we're kind of building the train tracks as they go, and you're always trying to find momentum. Really, in anything, I would say, in life, a lot of it's just around building momentum and when you have momentum, keeping that momentum going as much as possible. But there are times when the momentum stops, or there are some challenges where it doesn't go as planned. So for example, there was a period where early on we grew really fast, and then we started to have a lot of challenges with delivery and kind of client satisfaction, because we just had hired a bunch of people and we didn't really have a lot of guardrails on hiring. We didn't really know, and we were assigning these teams, and it seemed like life was awesome. We were making more money than we ever had. And then, oh boy, projects are going off the rails. And now we're realizing, if there's not like a super senior person on this project, or like one of the partners in essence on the project, it can't work. And now we're spread too thin, we're burning out. And so, we had to do a pretty big round of layoffs and cuts and kind of tighten the ship. That was really hard. I think, the first time you have to fire someone or let someone go, it's a terrible, terrible feeling. You take a lot of that on yourself. And so, I mean, even every time really, but the first time is especially painful and dramatic. And then it's around, resetting. But that gave us, I think, a lot of that moment, while it was really terrible in that particular time, it then helped us understand, how do we have a better hiring process? How do we make sure that we're hiring people that are going to be able to run projects? How are we making sure we're not hiring assholes just because they're very talented? How are we making sure that when we have a project, we have some sort of process around delivery? Yeah, if you have a person that is a partner and knows what they're doing running a project, yeah, it's going to go pretty smoothly. But once you start to open that up and you don't have any playbooks, you're just kind of everything is kind of a little loosey-goosey, those things start to break down. So, that really painful moment, it then, take a step back and we started to put those guardrails on. And there's lots of similar stories around that where you have some breaking moment, I would say, but it ends up being the catalyst to the next stage of growth.
I really like that. I have a feeling we'll probably get a little bit more into that theme as we go on. Here are some of the follow-up questions. Can you share an instance where a setback or failure turned out to be a hidden opportunity?
I think a lot of it comes back to kind of, especially when we were in the consulting business and the client services around maybe client feedback or challenges where you thought things were going well, but something ended up maybe not going as well as you thought. And there was, a lot of those in consulting. There's never smooth sailing, but each one, I would say, really gave us opportunity to kind of reflect and say, okay, how can we do this better? What do we need to do from a scoping perspective, for example? I would say early on, we got kind of taken the woodshed by a few clients that kept adding stuff in. We were doing fixed price. And that was okay. That was the price that we paid for where we were. But I think start thinking about, how do you start to put, more process guardrails on, be smarter in the sales process to pull that through. And there's lots of, similar examples. I would say another big one was not relying too much on one or two big accounts. We definitely had a couple accounts that grew too big at a proportion. When they scale back, then you put the whole company at risk. So lots of things around, each of those kind of moments, trying to figure out, how do we move forward better?
And there's certainly a through line there of understanding that when things don't go right, or you make a difficult decision, it's stepping back and understanding, what can I learn from this, and how could we make adjustments or pivots to be better next time?
100%. I think that is, one of the things I'm probably maybe most proud of it in my career. That one of the things I try to always do is, just like we would in design or product work, we're setting up an experiment and we want to see, does our feature move the needle? Is our assumption being used? We took that same approach to building the company, and a lot of the startups I still work with, always same thing, still take that approach. Things are always going to change. Like, again, it goes back to you want to build that momentum. You want to keep the doors open. You want to stay alive as long as possible. But the key is everything, especially when, in any stage, like you should always be reflecting on how can we get better as a team, and that was something we really drilled into our team members, is like experiment a lot. Like not only on we're not only experimenting on the projects and like building experiments for the software we're building, we're also experimenting on our process. What can we try this thing? Can we try, this round of user testing? Can we try this workshop format? We'll try anything, but let's have an honest assessment at the end. Like, did it work as well? Did it not work as well as we thought? What did we learn? And then, use that to kind of springboard us. And so I think that's super, super important. I would highly recommend it to anyone.
I agree. I think it's a great mindset. It's actually something I spoke a little bit about last year, just this idea, you build a product. One of the best ways to build a product is test.
Yeah.
Test. You test, you learn, you pivot. And I think that philosophy just works well in life. And
yeah,
thinking about process and even how you manage a team, how you manage your time, trying new things, understand how it works, listen to what other people are saying and make adjustments.
Exactly. Plus it's fun, you're always learning that way. That's always a great mindset, I think.
Definitely. Can you recall a moment in your career that significantly influenced your path?
A lot of them. Again, I think, I like to tie it a little bit to people. I think, meeting Scott Carruth at UCLA, that was a key moment to, starting philosophy. I met a good friend, but he was an early client of ours in the ad agency world, Brandon Kleinman. I had famous business cards when I was at UCLA, and he saw those online, reached out about a TV show. He ended up hiring us for a few projects at his ad agency, TWA Shy Day, like right when we were early stages. I don't know if we would have made it without those types of projects. We met Chris Chandler, who was then became a partner of ours, who was a long time like Disney and Fandango, and he was kind of the wise man in the room, I guess, especially with the enterprise, and really opened the door and propelled us in many ways. We had two of my other early partners, Nick and Brendan, who propelled us, especially on the engineering side. We met Lane Goldstone Haley, who is kind of a legend in the lean UX community, and she really got us really into the lean UX world, which was probably the most pivotal moment in taking us to the next level as a company. And yeah, so I think, and then there's been many other people along the way, but I think the people always are key drivers.
So let's talk about that. I think that's really interesting. Having other conversations, one of the key things that pops up a lot is meeting people and networking and understanding the importance of doing that. And you never know who you're going to talk to and what that relationship is going to lead to at some point down the road. And I've talked to a few people who have just by chance encounters met people who have gone on to become business partners, co-authors, whatever it may be. And that only happened because of an openness or willingness to put yourself out there and talk to someone. How have you thought about networking? I know we've met at a conference and that type of thing, but how do you view networking and how do you think about building, personal brand for yourself?
Yeah, it's a great piece. I think, as again, two young entrepreneurs building the business, like our whole thing was we had to go out hunt and then, eat that stuff. So we're always kind of networking, but it was always very tough for us. I'm kind of an ambivert. I'll go in from being extroverted to very introverted. And so I like networking, but straight networking is a little tough for me. So I think it's definitely a challenge. And sometimes part of it's just like, you just got to go do it. You just got to like say, hey, again, it's not my favorite thing, but I just want to be out there and meeting people. To your point, you never know what chance encounters you have. I think, we're both in New York. And I think one of the amazing things about New York City, probably the coolest aspect of it, and it's been harder recently post-pandemic, I think, but you're doing an amazing job of rebuilding the community here. But before that, and even still now, it's like, this is still a place where people go out, you still meet people, at the bar randomly. I met my girlfriend at the bar. And so you meet all these people, you never know where that's going to go. And I think also because there's a lot of transplants here, everyone is kind of in that mindset of, hey, if I'm out, like, here's my friends, and you never know from those connections. So I think that has helped a lot. I've always been a city kid. So there's, that mindset. I think it definitely cities lend itself a little bit more to having those chance encounters. But if you're not in a city, you still can make those encounters by, going to a conference, like you said, or, on your travels, like, maybe you'll just be, open. Maybe you'll do an Airbnb experience and see who you meet on your, on your travels. So I think there's different ways to open yourself up. But part of it, I think, is also just, again, keeping that open mind. Like you said, it's like you never know where these pieces, these moments are going to come, who you're going to meet at these events or conferences, and how that might change your world. And so as long as you keep your mind open to it, then amazing things start to happen.
I think there's also something about being intentional about it. Meetup is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
So we run the meetups out of, the office in the city. And a lot of people who are showing up there find that event just by being on Meetup, which, I've always thought is really interesting. In a lot of cases, it's like, I normally don't do this, but I saw this, it looked interesting. So I thought I'd stop by. It's just another good avenue. There's not even, it doesn't even have to be directly connected to what you do, right? Just finding things that you're interested in. And there's sites like Meetup and other avenues to explore those kinds of things. And even stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying that out. You never know what's going to happen, who you're going to meet, and what that evening or day can lead to.
100%. And I think, I couldn't agree more. And Meetup is an amazing platform for that. And it's good to see. It's like, I think New York, I think San Francisco, from talking people there, we're starting to rebuild those communities, and Meetup is coming back to life. I think there was a period it was a little tough there, but yeah, I think these are the great ways to do it.
What specific skills or mindsets have been crucial in navigating your career twists and turns?
Oh, I always feel like I'm not good enough. So there's always my skills are never good enough. But I think the big one would be curiosity. I think I always look for that in anyone that I'm hiring. I think that's always been something I'm passionate about, and I think, again, it goes back to what we were just talking about. Maybe you go to that meetup that you were curious about, and you don't know where that takes you. Maybe you go to a conference or trade show that is kind of different than what you're used to, but you never know what you're gonna spot there. So curiosity, I think, and especially, even these days, like, you can learn so much on YouTube and all these platforms for free. So I think curiosity is the number one thing. I think kind of, the grit, resilience piece is really important, especially if you're an entrepreneur. I think that's maybe the most important skill, is just sticking with it and staying alive and figuring out the next turn. And then the last one is just kind of that, going back to what we were talking about before, it's that experimentation, like being open to experimentation, and then being very diligent about always applying that back. One of our values at Philosophy, which has now become a working principle at InfoBeans, is make it better. It's always about, like, the lean process, right, of the product building, but it's also the company, it's also the self, taking those learnings. What are you learning in a book, whatever, and then how can you make yourself better? How can you make your company better? How can you make, whatever better? Your side project better.
A lot of really good stuff there. And I agree, I think, with everything you just said. With hindsight, what would you do differently in your career?
I never want to look in the past, so I'll put it that way. I think I would not have probably done 2 offices. I think, and that was partially my fault. I really had always wanted to move to New York, and I moved to New York pretty early on, and 3 or 4 years into creating Philosophy. I think that was a real challenge for us as a firm, and in hindsight. So I would say, keeping it small and 1 office versus 2 would have definitely been something that I would have done a bit different. We had 2 beautiful offices in New York and LA that were very expensive and a big burden, I think, in some ways. The flip side of that is it, opened up a lot of conversations. It made us relevant. It helped us do event building, especially in LA. So, it's like, it's tough, right? It's like, would we have gotten there if we didn't have those offices? I don't know. But it was certainly a scary thing for a bootstrap team. And again, maybe would have stayed a little scrappier like we did at the beginning. I think those are the big ones. I think there's lots of other, points where you could say, oh, I wish I did this differently. But I think if those were 2 big things that maybe I would do different.
Looking forward, what are you most excited about
We were just at a great meetup this week that Ryan was hosting, and I was sharing some of this stuff. But the reality is, I think there's just so much possibility, so much excitement right now with the AI and the possibilities for what that means to designers, to product people, to entrepreneurs. I think, of course, there's scariness, and there's the doomers and whatnot, and sure, we can get caught up in that. But I think the possibilities really open up because there are so many things that we've always wanted to do as product people, as designers, that we're now able to do more effectively. We can run research faster. We can have it help us synthesize data, transcriptions, help with the note taking. So we are able to, where maybe we didn't have time to do, one-on-one qualitative research, we can do that. We are going to get to the point where we can do hyper-personalized user interfaces, experiences, so that it's like super targeted to one specific user. I mean, this has been a dream of marketers as people for years. And, despite all of this hype around personalization, I mean, it's nowhere near close to what the real possibilities are. I think, with the Gen AI stuff, with like conversational, like, I don't want to like call up a human necessarily and like waste my time. But at the same time, like these very scripted, rigid chatbot experiences are just like a dreadful experience and never really work out. And so now having something that's, more more human-like, more natural. I can say whatever. I don't have to, always have a rigid word. And then if something goes wrong, it can still escalate that to a human. That's great. And I think the tools that just like, there's so much amazing tools out there that, help us build stuff better and faster. And so I think it's going to unlock a whole set of new software entrepreneurs. It's going to enable people to do a lot more with a lot less, which I think is just going to create unprecedented amount of growth and in the world. So super excited about all of that.
I think it's amazing already what's happened in the past year.
I know
with AI, there are a lot of people who are scared of it, or design, research, product, whatever it might be, fearful of what is this going to do to my job. But I really think that there's something really exciting about the possibilities of what we can do with AI just to make us better at our jobs.
Yeah, 100%. I've the last couple of years or year and a half, I've been doing a talk called, Gen AI is the new Renaissance. And it kind of paints the whole Renaissance backdrop, because really the Renaissance was famous for two things, right? It was famous for humanism and like getting people to focus on the beauty of the human and culture. Like, we're not going to be, eating our protein bars of like flies and like, praying to our computer overlords. Like, we're going to build this future. It's going to be a great future. And then the other is, it was like a period of tremendous growth, culture, art, economic growth. And I really believe that's setting up for the same thing now. It's an exciting time to be alive. And part of it is because, there's all these tools now, like, which is also what that talk is all about. Like, how can you use AI in the product development process? It's like, okay, well, what do I need to do market research for? Earlier today, Perplexity, deep research, OpenAI, deep research, researching all this stuff about insurance and researching stuff about private equity. And I'm in between meetings, I'm doing this. And now I can like put together a plan. I can, I can talk to OpenAI and put together a prototype idea. And then I can, whip something up in V0 or Cursor, like even one-shot something now that like tells that story. We always wanted to have coded prototypes. We sometimes built them if we had the budget for them, but like that was hard to do. Now it's like, I can build a coded prototype, in a week that, would have taken, or a day, and that would have taken way longer. And that's going to give me a lot more richer user feedback on than, a design prototype.
And by the way, you had a great slide, the last slide in your deck with the rock.
Oh yeah. Nice.
What was that? Remind me that I'll get the quote wrong, but I really like that one.
Yeah. So I stole the quote from my former director of AI, Chris Butler, and I created a slide on it. But the line is, just remember, computers are just rocks that we've tricked into thinking, because they are, right? It's a piece that we've literally mined a piece of metal. And the humans, by the way, have soldered the chips in there and, built the machines to, the humans have done all of that. The brain is a magical thing. And I mean, the computer is a magical thing, but what created that? The human brain. And the computers today, they can't even match the power of the human brain. They can't even come close to the power of the human brain. Even these AI systems, even these next quantum systems, not even close.
And this is a good segue into the next question here. What do you think the future of design looks like? And you may have answered some of that previously, but curious where you'll go with that.
I think it's going to allow us to do so many more pieces of the whole kind of lean and rapid experimentation, cycle or cycles in less time. And that ultimately is going to mean we're going to get more experiments out there, which means we're going to have better products and better experiences. The reason we're going to be able to do that is because we're going to be able to, we're going to be able to prototype something faster that's more realistic than we were before. And we're going to be able to get user feedback on that, and maybe more user feedback than we were before. And then we're going to be able to put more stuff out there, and we're going to be able to monitor more stuff because we're going to be able to track more data, which is going to allow us to, have this further piece. My take is we're probably going to have more people in these roles, but they're going to be more spread out, or there's going to be a host of new companies that are going to come up and fill those things. And what those things are, what those worlds are, what those products are, I have no idea. Hopefully someone listening to this podcast will have one of those ideas, right? But I think that's going to be a really amazing thing. And then the other thing is, as I was just talking about, that hyper personalization, I think that's going to be a really amazing challenge for designers, is how do we build those experiences and the flexibility so that our ecosystem can serve the right thing and is still easy to use for people. And then the last thing that I really want to stress for designers, because this was obviously my talk this week, was this concept of design-led AI. It's really around how do you build trust with these systems? There's still a lot of distrust, internally and externally with these AI systems. And so I really believe it's designers' responsibilities, product people responsibility, engineers. We have to, help people try these tools. We have to help people, trust these tools and these experiences. And ultimately, that's the job of us, that are listening to this podcast. It's not going to be a startup is going to say whatever they want, but a person has to use that thing. They have to trust that thing and want to use that thing and believe it's going to help them do their job. And the way that's going to happen is an experience that makes them believe that it's useful for them.
And that was really good stuff. And you had some really good resources. And I'm going to ask at the end where people can find you. This may kind of cut into that now. Are the resources that you presented at the end of the meetup, are those available?
Yeah. Freely available. Maybe we can link them out in the show notes.
Yeah.
I haven't even published them on LinkedIn yet. But yeah, I created a toolkit for design-led AI. Hopefully I'll continue building for it, but it's a set of FigJam templates and work for workshops that you can run 9 of those. There's scorecards for things like a bias audit, a trust scorecard, KPI scorecards, again, thinking about this intersection of trust, production launch checklist. So lots of cool stuff that I think hopefully help, right? Hopefully help pave that way forward.
I just put down a note. I'll make sure I do get that in the show notes. What are the most important takeaways from your career that you would want everyone to know about?
I guess I'll be a bit of a broken record, but be curious, be resilient, keep the momentum going, and keep opening as many doors as possible and seeing which doors are the ones that are going to help you build that momentum. And if you get behind some momentum, just push that boulder down the hill as fast as you can and run with it.
And what advice would you give to someone earlier in their career? This may be repetitive because I think you've given a lot of great advice for really someone at any stage of their career. But if you had to specifically say, okay, you're just starting out and trying to figure out, here's what I would advise you. And likewise to someone who's a more seasoned leader.
I mean, I would say a lot of the same advice. If I was to give something new, especially to someone new in their career, it would be play around with these AI tools and just experiment with stuff. Just have fun with it and see what world it takes you on. And then with that, like if you're, applying for a job, like right now, the job market, I think is actually really, really tough for people, especially in our industry and especially for junior people. But how do you stay ahead? You build a prototype for that company, right? You say, hey, I see you talking about this, and I built a little rough prototype in one of these things, and I show it to you, you at the hiring manager, Ryan, or whoever ends up that being. So I think that's a little bit tied together, but I would definitely look to that. And maybe, I guess, for people further in their career, because I think what I've seen is people at the kind of mid-stage, senior stage, there's 2 camps. There's one camp that have really embraced the AI stuff. There's another camp that is a little hesitant because, again, these things are kind of average. They give you the mid answer of these pieces of whatever its content is in them. And so if you're senior, you see it's kind of like average. But again, I would recommend you just to like play around with the tools, try something new, maybe pick up something where you're more of a traditional product person, but you want to play around with coding more, maybe use like a Bolt or a Lovable to, build a coded prototype of whatever your thing is. So maybe especially if you're senior, like play around with the tool that's not like a direct one-to-one of what you do, and just experiment with it and see, does it help you take you into a new direction that maybe you didn't think was possible?
That's really good advice. Moving into closing questions here, what is your favorite quote?
Too many of them, but I think I would stick with one from Steve Jobs, which is, you've got to start at the customer experience and move backwards to the technology. If you just do the technology first, it's not gonna sell. And probably paraphrase that a little bit, but I think especially now with anything, right? There's always been hype cycles, and especially now with AI. And before that we had blockchain. Before that we had AI or machine learning. And I think people they glamp on to, oh, we got to do this technology, thing. They don't think about the business. They don't think about the customer experience or what people want. And also they sell it as that. They sell, hey, oh, we got this cool new, distributed ledger that's, or we got this cool new AI LLM. But people don't know what that is. The average person out there doesn't know what that is. What's the benefit to me? How can I get my job done faster? How can I connect with new people faster? The technology is irrelevant at the end of the day. And so I think Steve Jobs is amazing at that.
So that's a good one. I always appreciate the Steve Jobs quotes. There is a lot of really good content out there. What are you looking at now? What would you recommend to others? I know you put a lot of great book reviews out there.
Yeah, I love reading books. I love reading, physical books. So I would say I'll keep it with that. The two books I just finished most recently was Build by Tony Fadell, which he, speaking of Steve Jobs, but he has a great story, and it's kind of a bit of a story of his career. Building, starting, in General Magic, and then going into building the iPod at Apple, and then the iPhone, and then Nest. So it's a bit of his career, but then also telling lessons of design, product, entrepreneurship along the way, recruiting. So that was a great read. I know it's pretty popular. I also just finished the Lean Product Playbook, which is kind of what I've been doing. It's kind of cool to it's how I've been building products for so long. But it was just a very, if you like lean or you like product experimentation, and you aren't super advanced at it, it's like an amazing playbook of like 0 to 1 on running that process. I mean, it's if you're like super advanced at it, it's going to be a little basic, I would say. And then I'm looking forward to, I got a lot of books behind me in the bookshelf here. So I'm trying to figure out what my next pick is going to be. I think it's going to be the World is for Sale, which I hear is really good, or The Power of Moments. But I've got a lot more to choose from. So yeah, but books, and I post on LinkedIn kind of book reviews as I finish some of them at least. But I've been reading like about 30 books a year the last couple of years. So yeah, it's been fun.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on the social platforms, although I don't really post, or I don't really go on Instagram or Twitter too much. But LinkedIn is probably the best place, Taymor. So you can find me on Emerson Taymor, but I think my handle's Taymor. And it's Taymor on Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever, and all that fun stuff.
Highly recommend checking it out. I know you put out a lot of really good stuff. I will be sure to get the toolkit out there. We'll find a way to link that into the show notes. But Emerson, thank you so much for taking time to do this today. I really appreciate it. I think this was a really good episode, so I'm excited to get this one out.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Ryan. It was fun to recant some tales, hopefully interesting the audience, and anyone out there wants to connect, always happy to chat and riff and learn from each other.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content today, please like, subscribe, and comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.